Hi, my name is Gordy Hoag, and this is Community Connections. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people. People who've had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who've had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hoag, and today's guest is a man who has a long, incredible history of engagement in volunteerism with the context of communities dating back till about 1970. Way back, he was a city councilor in Port Hardy and in White Rock. He was a member of the Legislative Assembly representing Surrey White Rock. He has volunteered in many community organizations, including the Peace Arch Hospital, White Rock Sea Festival, Museum and Archives, just to mention a few. And I'm delighted to welcome Ken Jones. Welcome, Ken, to Community Connections.
Hi, Gordon. So it's good. I just wanted to correct one thing there. I was the MLA for Surrey Cloverdale.
Oh, that's correct. Surrey Cloverdale.
Yeah. Wilf Hurd was our member for this riding at that time.
Okay, hopefully we don't have to correct too many things as we go along. That's and I should have known that. In fact, I did know that.
Yeah.
My apologies. My apologies.
It's easy to do because everything else is around here. I came to White Rock actually for the first time as a young boy.
Oh,
I ended up at the Oddfellows camp for 2 weeks down on the Semiahmoo First Nations land, where they had a large field and a camp there for young people from all over the province. And I came from Port Alberni, so it was a big trip for us. And one of the most significant things that I remember of it was two things. One was the stinging nettles that I got stung with the first time I'd ever run into stinging nettles in my life. They were in the field adjoining the road. And the other was a big barge that had just been beached right on the White Rock Beach, just off East Beach. And everybody was walking out to this big barge and wondering how they were going to get it off. I don't think they ever did get it off. They ended up taking it apart, and I think people have some of their houses built with the wood that was taken from it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there were still little remnants that were there for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Sticking out.
I came to Port Alberni by birth. My father was born in Port Alberni in 1912, and my grandfather had come from England. And it was interesting. He came from England in 1912. Actually, he came in 1900 and with his first wife to Calgary. And there must have been flu at that time or something, or TB, I think it was. And she died within a month of arriving in Calgary. And so later on, he ended up back in England again, and he ended up marrying his wife's best friend, and he brought her out to Port Alberni. And it was at that time they actually came across the Atlantic a couple of months before the Titanic went down.
Oh, wow.
So they were lucky they weren't on that one, and or I would not be here possibly. But we've got after coming here, my grandfather turned around in 1915 and enlisted with the Canadian Expeditionary Forces in the First World War, and went back to England and trained there, and then went over to Belgium, where he served several years in the trenches and working in the engineering side of things. That was the railway troops, they called them. They did everything that was mechanical. And then he came back here with a serious problem called trench mouth. He lost all his teeth, and he had a lot of other health issues. And he went to work in creating homes in Port Alberni. He got elected to city council in 1925 to 42. And and I didn't know about that when I first got elected to Port Hardy City Council. I found that out later.
Oh,
It was kind of interesting that how our life is planned away. And then I came here in 1972 after 5 years in Port Hardy. I actually joined BC Tel in Dawson Creek in 1964, and I started installing telephones there after spending a year and a half working with CN Telecommunications up the Alaska Highway, going from Grand Prairie to Dawson City. So I got a little northern experience as well.
what prompted you to
And
run for council in Port Alberta or in Port Hardy?
um, actually, it was my experiences in Hudson Hope, where I was the uh, telephone man for the building of the WAC Bennett Dam, and uh, when I volunteered the first day I arrived there, because the person I was replacing was the fire chief, I volunteered to become a member of the fire department. And very shortly I became deputy chief. And I found out that that was a training officer and the person who went to the city village council meetings once a month to give the fire report. So I ended up going to their council meetings back in that time. When I got to Port Hardy, I found out there was no fire department, so I started agitating for a fire department, and ran eventually for city council and got elected on my first try.
Wonderful.
That's how I got involved. I went to the city clerk wanting to find out what the assignment I was given, which was the chairman of parks, and he laughed at me. The city clerk did, because he said, "We don't have any files on that. We don't have any parks." So I said, "Oh, okay. I guess I got a clean slate. I'll go to work." And so I put park reserves on all of the creeks and all the waterfront areas, and uh, tried to acquire as much parkland as I could around the foreshore and out on the spit, and where the First Nations had their most of their shellfish, and we protected that area for a long time. In fact, it's still protected by declaring it as parks. Then they didn't have a recreation commission, so we started a recreation commission. I became the first director of that, or first chairman of that. Following year, Jerry Fernie, the chairman of the Mount Waddington Regional District, contacted me and said, "Would you help us by being chair of a new regional recreation commission that we're going to form here?" And he said, and I said, "Yeah, okay." And he we went to town, and as I found out that there'd never been a regional recreation commission anywhere in British Columbia. So working with the recreation department in Victoria, we were able to create this, and we hired our first recreation director, and for that whole North Island area. As it turned out, the others, once they got used to sharing this one, I think there were 3 other communities there ended up hiring their own recreation director because they wanted more time. Well, while we were, as the chairman of the recreation commission, we decided that the town needed a swimming pool as well as the parks that we'd set aside. We just created a ball field, and we also ended up creating a cemetery because there was no place to bury anybody up there. They had to ship them out to Campbell River or Vancouver. So we ended up getting all those things done. We started an indoor swimming pool, and when I came to to White Rock, I wasn't here more than about 6 months, and I saw in the paper that the council had turned down the swim club's request for a piece of land for a swimming pool to start their indoor swimming pool plan. And so I contacted these people at the swim club and asked them if they'd come over to my house on Saturday and and we could talk about it. And I got a hold of the plans for the Port Hardy pool, and I said, uh, here's a community of 3,500. Surely an area of 35,000, including South Surrey and White Rock, uh, going to 100,000 could be able to afford a swimming pool. So let's get to work. We need 2.5 acres. Doesn't matter who owns it or where it is or how much it's going to cost. Just come back to next Saturday's meeting with everybody bringing any type of land that they think is available that's 2.5 acres or larger. As it turned out, Rod Kerr came back, who was the school trustee, and said that we had a piece of property up by the junior secondary school that was 12.5 acres. They needed 10 acres for the swimming pool, for the track, and they had 2.5 acres left over at the bottom end of it. So that sounded like the right idea, and we had it was centrally located. So we went to work, and Rod Kerr took on the chairmanship of the committee, and Lynn Sully, who was your previous interview's father, Ken, and we ended up having people like Noel Morrow, who was an Olympic swimmer. What's her name? Phyllis Brown, who was the secretary of the swim club, and there was Don McKinnon, who was a trustee or was the director of adult education in the Surrey School Board.
So your experiences in Port Hardy obviously served well in moving to this community. How did you move from Port Hardy to White Rock? What was involved? Was that a job transfer, or what was it that brought you to the community?
Well, in Port Hardy, I had gone from Hudson Hope to Port Hardy with BC Tel, and I went into radio microwave, and we did radio microwave work on the from basically Alert Bay and the mainland all the way up to almost Kitimat, and mobile radios, marine radios, the main radio systems up the West Coast. We maintained all of those as part of the team that we had working at Port Hardy, and at Tretch Island. We maintained a site up at Tretch Island as well. It was called tropospheric scatter system. And that was that I then, after 5 years there, posted to a outside plant engineering job in the Lower Mainland. And we looked around the Lower Mainland where we would have our home. I'd grown up in Port Alberni with lots of rain, and Port Hardy had a fair amount of rain. So I said, we're going to find the place with the least amount of rain. So that leaves us two places, White Rock and Tsawwassen. So we got found a home in each place. And then we went to the bank, and in those days it was, you had to get a mortgage to pay for it, and we went to the bank, and they said, well, the house in White Rock is $29,000. We'll give you a mortgage for that, but the $39,000 one at Tsawwassen, we can't. You don't have enough collateral. But we really wanted to come to White Rock anyways because we like the small town and the cultural ambiance of this area, which was really the kind of thing that we really appreciated.
Okay, we're glad that you made that choice coming here. So sorry, I cut you off there as you were talking a little bit more about the swimming pool and the evolution of the swimming pool, and then eventually bringing you to run for council and be actively involved in those things. So pick up on that.
Bill Webster was also, he represented the Surrey School Board, the Surrey Recreation as their assistant director. And we had a really solid team there. And the first meeting that Rod called for, he said, we've got to set a target that we're going to start this pool in 2 years' time. And I said, no, we've got to set a target. We're going to start this pool in 1 year's time, because otherwise we'll spend a whole year procrastinating. We'll probably never get it done. So everybody agreed, and we started. We actually worked on that pool, getting all the design work up. We even hired the architects for that pool, and then we handed it over to Surrey to do the actual construction, to supervise it rather, and we did that within 1 year and 1 month.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty good record.
That's a good strategy. The old adage, work expands to fill the time allotted. So you took that time and adjusted it. Well done.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That way we got things done. And it was a great project. It was we found out that pools were the most used item in the recreational field anywhere in the continent, and so therefore it was a good thing to work for. We raised the funds through getting through. Don McKinnon got $250,000 from the federal government Winter Works program, and we got $250,000 from the provincial government from their recreation program, and then we asked the city of Surrey and White Rock each to put up 170, I think it was $176,000 each towards the $1.3 million total cost. So that pool today would take $50 million to replace it.
Sure would. Yeah.
Things have changed.
They sure have.
And, but it was a real bargain. We turned it over to the two cities as a committee, basically just at the start of construction. They didn't have to do anything for it.
Yeah. And then the operating costs were shared, weren't they, between?
The operating costs were to be shared. We even made that recommendation about operating costs being equally shared between Surrey and White Rock. It later got adjusted based on the fact that there was a larger population growth in Surrey than there was in White Rock.
Yeah, and I think there was a bit of a trade-off for the Seniors Activity Center, which White Rock then assumed full cost for. Like two of them were shared at that point. So that's a great legacy for the community that you've provided there. So then move along in terms of how you were then enticed yourself into running for council.
We ran for council and ended up with our involvement with the swim club, with the pool. We must have had some recognition in the community, and we ended up topping the polls in our first try at the White Rock Council. We also had 2 years of experience in Port Hardy, so that was also another credit to us.
When you're talking we, who's the we you're talking about?
Oh, that's the royal we.
The royal we.
I use the we rather than I. I tend to think of myself as just a part of many other people's endeavors. I didn't get elected on my own. I got elected because of a lot of other people going to work and making it possible for me to be elected.
And I think probably maybe a lot of people don't understand how important your family is in terms of running for office, and so many people in the community that make all of that possible. It just
very essential.
Very essential. And
very
the democratic process, it couldn't be done otherwise.
You wouldn't be where you were without Laverne and your sons.
That's for sure. Family members and friends.
And a lot of.
Fortunately, that's what democracy is about, engaging that way.
Yeah. And then, we got involved in a lot of the projects here in White Rock. And for 4 years, we were on city council. I got reelected the second time. The first time we spent $500 to run our campaign. The second time we got elected, we spent $50 to get elected. in the cost of our campaign.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from today's huge amounts that we see. I really can't understand why we spend so much on trying to promote people to get elected.
Yeah.
It actually distorts the process because it puts the choice more in the hands of the people with the most amount of money and the most interest, and that's usually the real estate and developer people.
And fortunately, there have been some changes in both provincial and federal legislation that limit the amount of money that people can donate. I think that's been a good step
We
forward.
have brought in some good controlling legislation in that regard, but it's still pretty wide.
It certainly is. And
Yeah.
from there, you moved on to provincial politics.
Oh, sure. You blocked there.
I'm sorry, just
I
you,
didn't hear you.
you went from there on to running provincially and getting elected and traveling to Victoria.
Yes,
Uh,
that was a
Unique.
real surprise. Actually, uh, I was the federal riding president for the Federal Liberal Party at the time, and the provincial party members uh, executive called me into a meeting because they were trying to find candidates to fill some gaps in the area, namely Newton and Cloverdale and White Rock. Well, they had one for White Rock, and so they went around we all threw names and this and that, and finally they said, "Well, what about you?" And I said, "What? I'm not. I've just haven't got any money. I haven't got any organization. There's no uh, experience in that area. Uh, how? Oh, they said, well, how about if you just uh, be a name on the ballot so we can if you can get elected, so people who want to vote Liberal can vote Liberal. And I said, okay, I'll let my name stand, but only on the condition that I'm not going to spend any money and just be a name on the ballot. And they said, well, could you go to Cloverdale? I said, oh, I don't know much about Cloverdale other than it's way over there out of South Surrey. And said, well, okay. So I ended up getting nominated for it. But in order to get nominated, I had to go out and find a president, get a person to become a riding president so we could hold a nomination meeting. And we held a nomination meeting on the day that Rita Johnson dropped the writ to call the election, which was 28 days hence.
Yeah.
And so we had no money, we had no organization. I think there were 10 members in the riding association, and so we went to work.
Yeah.
One guy came along and offered me a computerized office and calling system, and so I said, okay, if you want, but you're going to have to raise all the money for it because we don't have any money to pay you. I said, okay. So he went to work and he ended up creating the first digital office in the province where people would be phoned. They would then indicate on their phone how much they were who they were wanted to vote for by the various numbers on the keypad. And if they were asked if they wanted to be in touch with the campaign manager or the policy person or a sign. They just touch the right number on there, and they would get they would be call forwarded directly to that person's home. And that's how we operated it.
So this was how many Liberals were elected in that election? Because that was sort of the downfall.
17 Liberals were elected on October the 17th in 1991.
And that was sort of the downfall.
We ended up actually becoming the official opposition as the Socreds got decimated and the NDP came in with the majority government.
Yeah.
And our job then was to hold the government accountable.
So that was a big
That's where I got involved.
Turnaround in BC politics. Now, you've spent all that time and you've since then been actively involved in this community, and we've seen a lot of changes. what do you see as the future of our community in South Surrey White Rock and all the changes you've been a part of and witnessed and the things that are going on in terms of the growth and the demands of Metro Vancouver? Where do you see our future and as a community? What's it going to look like
Well,
50 years?
our future could be a very, very nice community if we keep the growth down. We, I ran on a controlled growth in 1972, 73, and or 70, you know, 73, 74. And that was popular then, and I think it's still popular right now. The people in this community have constantly said that they don't want massive growth in the area, and we have to fight to be able to protect that. And it takes a whole community to be involved. But the end result is that you end up with a community that's got a beautiful ambiance, beautiful recreation. You've got lots of green space. You've got parks and you've got walkability, and that really is important, I think, to making for a great place to bring up children and for retiring in your own home as you're a senior.
Yeah, and I think we've seen what's happened in the United States and in a number of areas, and the research is showing that there are fewer and fewer democracies in the world, and some of the things, some of the areas we do call democratic seem to be less democratic. How can we ensure that we keep that vibrant sense of engagement? I think we're pretty fortunate in Canada to still have a pretty good democracy, but certainly in some of the research done by Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel economist, said that found that political voice was an integral component of a citizen's quality of life. And that's something that seems to be, with all of the social media changing that. What do you think we can do to ensure that we have those levels of engagement?
I think that basically is that we have to have people involved at all ages, right from when they're in elementary school all the way through. Get them involved and let them realize that they can have a say in how things are run, and they can do it by getting involved in choosing the people that are their local and provincial and federal members representing their voice, and make sure that those people know what they want, what they desire, and that's uh, the more we can encourage the younger people to be involved, and we need to have our seniors to continue to be involved. We need to be listening to their voices as well. There's a lot of different discussion out there. Don't always rely on what comes through on the internet as your source of knowledge. Go and be involved at the local area. Uh, just uh, go to the public meetings. We what disappoints me right now is when the city holds a public hearing or a public meeting on something, we only get a handful of people. And those are the people who are really dedicated to democracy. But they shouldn't be the only voices being heard. And they do keep in touch with a lot of other people as well. So they do give some voice. But we need the ordinary person to stand up and say their opinions, not letting outside people influence how our community is, and letting people who have only a financial interest in determining what our community is. We, the people that live here, need to be involved and need to be listened to by our city councils and our provincial and federal representatives. And it's very, very important that that not be abrogated to others who come for the buck and leave, and they're never you never see them again.
That's an incredibly
That's
important.
my soapbox.
No, and I think
uh,
that's
we need to do improvements such as the recreation programs. We need to do improvements such as the railway off the waterfront, so the waterfront here, uh, of which I'm chairman of the or president of the Smart Rail organization, is working on relocation and rail safety.
So
and
that's an ever
that's a
so
whole nother story.
yeah, but that's a really important message in terms of democracy and community, and particularly when we're now seeing so much social media that so many people can get involved in so many ways,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're not people who live here and care about it as passionately as we do, who are have spent so much time here engaged in it. So that's a
Well,
really important message.
using Zoom and Teams and these other multimedia opportunities for getting together is a wonderful way to involve a lot more of the public. And
Yeah.
uh, but it's also has to be made so that it's all open. It shouldn't be just some person lecturing to you what they want to do, and you're there with maybe typing in a question or two.
Exactly. Yeah.
It needs to be two-way and
Absolutely.
full two-way to make this into a democratic process.
Yeah, that's it.
Gordon, I've got a picture here I want to show you.
Okay.
That's a Gordon Hogue
It,
many years ago.
can you hold it still and just spread
Okay,
it out a
I'm
little
trying to
bit?
hold it steady. There. Uh, that is the torch lighting of the BC Games in 1998 for the BC Games for athletes with a disability.
Oh
That's,
yeah.
that's when you were MLA,
Yeah.
and that's Doug McCallum and Marvin Hunt, who was city councilor at the
Yeah.
time,
Is that
and
you?
Chuck or Charles or Charlie. Um, oh, what's his name? Uh,
There's a picture from way back there. So where was?
yeah,
Yeah, that was some some important times. So
yeah, that's 1998.
98. Yeah.
There,
I
and
look a little
here's
different. I seem to have
here's
aged.
here's this is what it was all
Oh,
for.
oh yes.
These are the people that were the athletes that
I,
are on the podium,
I remember
and
that so well. Yeah.
that was so so much of a opportunity for our city and our city being Surrey in that case, but White Rock was fully involved in it.
Fully involved in it.
We had more volunteers, over 700 volunteers in that
Yeah.
games.
And you played an
And
integral part in that. So again,
I
so
was vice co-chair in it,
yeah,
directly reporting to Charlie.
yeah. So I see that we've gone over half an hour now, so we're almost out of time. So, are there any final messages you'd like to leave for some people today, and maybe people who'll be looking at this 50 years from now and saying, who are those guys out there, and the message you have? So, you got some final messages to pass on, Ken?
Well, I think that what makes this community so great is its cultural involvement, the artistic works. You can see over my shoulder, you can see a painting on my right, and that's by Yvonne Maximachuk. We've had some great artists like Yvonne and like Deborah Putnam and Robert Genn, who've been very much involved in our communities. We have quite a few First Nations artists that have done great works here as well. You, there's the work of the arts, the work of George Zuckerman and the uh, community music concert series. My wife was involved for many years, about 20, 25 years, running the White Rock Chamber Music organization. So that has now finished this year, but it's provided opportunities for non-professional people or retired professional people to be involved in bringing concerts to the community. There are many different ways that our various artistic people come into our community and provide that extra that really makes it livable.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think that should be as much supported as possible.
yeah, that's a great message, and it's people like you who have ensured that we are a pluralistic society, that we're a multicultural community that supports
Yep.
athletics, and the sports, and all kinds of culture. So, Ken,
There's
thank you so
there's
very
just
much.
one final thing I'd like to say. It's something that my mother taught me when I was about 8 years old.
Yeah,
She said, "Ken, you're no better than anyone else. You're no worse than anyone else. You're an equal to all."
that's a good
And
message, and
I've taken that as my mandate that I can uh, always place myself in the position where I am at the same level of anybody in our community and our society, and not feel either lesser or greater than the persons I'm with.
there's a great message for everyone in our community and in our country, that everyone is equal and should be treated as such, and everyone has a voice. And you've expressed yours beautifully in terms of being able to make our community, our province, and our country a better place. Thank you, Ken. Thank you so very much for being a guest on Community Connections. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.